My father's voice cut across the room like a knife. We already divided everything. Their eyes swept over me as if I was some wandering beggar who'd stumbled in off the street, not their own flesh and blood. No seat for me at the long oak table. No welcome in their cold smiles. People know me as Danielle. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever felt like you were written out of your own family's story? The lawyer coughed, shuffling a stack of papers, uneasy. I'm sorry, he said, voice trembling, but there's an issue. Dad's lip curled, annoyed. What issue? The lawyer cleared his throat again, his eyes darting toward me. Her name, he stammered, pointing at me with a shaking hand, is the only one on the will. It was like a grenade went off in the room. My mother's face went pale, mouth snapping shut, so fast I thought she might bite through her tongue. My brother's hands clenched, knuckles white. My sister froze mid-sip, wine glass tipping dangerously in her grip. Dad's voice dropped to a hiss. That's impossible. The lawyer pushed his glasses higher on his nose. It's very clear, he said. Everything, the house, the accounts, the land, is left to Danielle. I felt the air shift around me, thick and poisoned. For a moment, a flicker of relief rose in my chest, until I saw the way Dad looked at me, like I'd personally betrayed him just by existing. You weren't invited for a reason, he spat, eyes burning with something almost inhuman. I swallowed, steadying my voice. Why? My sister slammed her glass down, red splashing across white linen. You don't deserve it, Danielle, she snapped. Grandpa meant to give it to us. I shook my head, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. That's not what he wrote, I said. That's not what he wanted. Dad stood, hands trembling, barely holding back rage. You're making a mistake coming here, he growled. But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. I straightened my shoulders, planting my feet on the floor like roots. If they thought I was leaving empty-handed, they had another thing coming. A shiver ran down my spine as the lawyer slid the papers closer to me, eyes full of dread. And before anyone else could speak, my sister threw her napkin down and started to rise. My sister practically lunged across the table, her voice rising with a shrill panic that made the chandelier tremble. You can't just show up after everything, she shouted, eyes wild. You think you're owed this? I stayed perfectly still, letting her words wash over me like stale rain. It's not about what I'm owed, I told her, voice even. It's about what Grandpa decided. She let out a harsh laugh. Grandpa was senile, Danielle. He didn't know what he was signing. The lawyer flinched. That's not correct, he stammered. I met with him personally many times. His mind was sound. My mother's icy voice sliced through the chaos. You shouldn't even be here, she hissed. We made sure you wouldn't find out about the reading. I blinked, feeling the poison of those words settle in my bones. You hid it from me? Dad didn't flinch. Of course we did, he said. You're a disappointment. You always were. Something in my chest burned, then went cold. And you thought stealing my inheritance would fix that? He slammed a hand against the table so hard the wine glasses rattled. You don't deserve that money. I looked at the papers the lawyer had laid out, my name printed clearly, undeniable. I do, I said quietly, because Grandpa knew the truth. Tom, my brother, finally spoke up, voice dripping with disgust. You really think you can just take the house? The land? After we took care of everything while you ran away? My jaw tightened. I didn't run. I snapped. I escaped. His face flushed crimson, like I'd slapped him. You'll regret this. I stood, gathering the papers into my bag with shaking hands. No, I said, steady now. For once, I won't. My sister pounded the table again, splintering the wood. You're going to destroy this family, Danielle. I felt something twist behind my ribs, regret, maybe. But then I remembered every night they locked me out, every day they turned their backs, every moment they reminded me I was less. Maybe this family needs to be destroyed, I whispered. The lawyer cleared his throat, afraid to meet anyone's eyes. Danielle, you need to sign to confirm acceptance. I nodded, pen in hand, a weight lifting off me as the ink touched the paper. And just as I drew the final curve of my name, Dad's voice came crashing back. "Put the pen down," Dad barked, the words landing like a gunshot. His voice was shaking, with rage, with fear, maybe with the final realization that he couldn't control me anymore. I set the pen down anyway, slowly, deliberately, then looked him dead in the eye. "Why?" I asked. "So you can steal it?" His jaw clenched, a muscle ticking in his cheek. "You don't understand what you're doing," he spat. My sister shoved her chair back so violently it nearly toppled. "Danielle, think about what you're doing," she pleaded. "If you take this money, you ruin everything." I raised an eyebrow. "Everything you built on a lie?" She hesitated, her face twisting. "We deserve it more than you," she choked. "We stayed. We obeyed. You left." I let out a bitter laugh. "I survived." I corrected her. "That's different." Mom slammed her napkin on the table, her voice dropping to a low, poisonous hiss. "Don't you dare talk about surviving. You wouldn't even have a roof if it wasn't for us." I stared at her, my pulse steady as a war drum. "That roof had holes you never bothered to fix," I shot back. "Don't pretend you saved me." The lawyer shifted in his chair, clearly wishing he could melt through the floor. "Legally, the will is final," he stammered. I have to file it today." Tom growled. "If you do, you're siding with her." The lawyer swallowed hard. "I'm just doing my job." Dad stood up, towering over the table. "If you walk out of here with those papers," he said, voice shaking, "you will never set foot in this family again." My throat tightened, the old wound of being unloved threatening to reopen. But then I remembered Grandpa's letter, his scrawled words telling me I was the only one who ever saw him. "I already lost this family," I said, each word measured. "I don't need to lose myself, too." Tom's chair crashed to the floor as he lunged toward me, eyes wild. But the lawyer jumped between us, voice trembling. "Don't," he warned. "You'll regret it." Tom froze, breathing hard, his fists clenched. I picked up the signed document and folded it carefully, the paper warm against my skin like a living heartbeat. No one was taking this away from me, not again. Just as I turned for the door, Mom's voice cracked behind me. Mom's voice ripped through me, sharp as broken glass. I turned, hand on the doorknob, heart thundering against my ribs. She stood there trembling, mascara smudged, clinging to the table like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "If you do this," she rasped, "you will destroy this family." I let the weight of her words sink in, then shook my head. "No, Mom," I said, voice quiet but ironclad. "You destroyed it the day you decided I wasn't part of it." Her face crumpled, rage and grief dancing together. "We raised you," she cried. "We fed you, clothed you. How can you turn your back on us?" My throat burned with the memory of cold dinners alone, birthdays forgotten, tears wiped away in silence. "You raised me to survive you," I told her, steady. "And now I'm finally free." Tom stalked forward, still seething. "You're nothing without us," he snarled. "No one will stand with you once they see what you've done." I squared my shoulders, breathing through the sting. "I'd rather stand alone than be your puppet," I fired back. The lawyer tried to cut the tension, his voice barely more than a squeak. "Danielle, if you want me to file this, I'll escort you to the courthouse myself," he offered. My sister let out a strangled sob. "Please," she begged, "don't take everything. We'll have nothing." I swallowed the guilt like a bitter pill. "I had nothing for years," I reminded her. "And none of you cared." Mom stepped forward again, her hand shaking as she reached for mine. "Danielle, sweetheart, you don't understand." I pulled away. "No," I interrupted. "You don't understand. You raised me in your shadows and called it love. You made me believe I was small. I'm done playing that part." A hush fell so deep it hurt my ears. I turned the doorknob, tasting freedom at last, when Dad's voice thundered one more time. "Walk out, and you're dead to us." I paused, let the ache settle, then turned back with a calm that surprised even me. "Then consider me reborn," I said, stepping through the doorway without looking back. As the door clicked shut behind me, I heard a crash inside, like the past finally breaking. The courthouse steps burned beneath my feet, sunlight glaring off the white stone as I gripped the file folder so tight my knuckles ached. Each step felt like shedding 1,000 pounds of shame. The lawyer walked next to me, trying to keep up, breathing hard. "You okay?" he asked, cautious. I nodded, though a tremor ran through me. "I will be," I said, voice steadier than I felt. We stepped inside, the blast of cold air making me shiver. It smelled like stale coffee and paperwork and a strange kind of hope. As we reached the clerk's window, my phone vibrated again and again in my pocket. I didn't have to look to know it was them, Tom, Mom, Dad. I ignored it. The clerk, a tired woman in thick glasses, glanced up. "What can I help you with?" My throat went dry, but I managed. "I need to file this will." The lawyer gave her the paperwork, hands steady now. "Everything is correct. All signatures are final." The clerk flipped through the pages, scanning, then nodded. "Looks clean," she confirmed. "It will be processed today." A breath whooshed from my lungs, relief, terror, all tangled together. The lawyer turned to me, offering a small, reassuring smile. "You did it," he said. "It's yours." Yours. That word sank into my bones, so unfamiliar it almost hurt. Mine. My future. My freedom. For a second, a wave of sadness crashed through me. I could still hear my mother's voice, that poison sweetness, trying to pull me back. I could see my sister's tears. But then I remembered the way they'd left me out, the years of closed doors and cold shoulders, and I knew this was the only path left. The lawyer handed me a receipt, stamped and sealed. "Congratulations, Danielle," he said. "Your grandfather would be proud." I smiled, tears finally spilling down my cheeks, unstoppable. "Thank you," I whispered. Outside, the wind felt cleaner somehow, brushing against my skin like a blessing. As I stepped down those courthouse stairs, a text lit up on my phone from Tom. "You'll regret this." I wiped my face, heart pounding, and typed back only 2 words. "Watch me." And with that, I walked toward a future that was finally mine, leaving their poison behind for good. The ride back to the house felt like a dream I'd never dared to have, the world outside passing in colors so bright they almost hurt. My hands rested on the folder in my lap, the lawyer's stamped receipt still tucked inside. Every mile away from them felt like peeling off another layer of suffocation. As I pulled into the driveway of my house, the house they had tried to erase me from, I saw the front steps, the same cracked tiles Grandpa used to complain about, and I felt something shift in my chest. Home. I stepped out, keys trembling in my hand, breathing in the quiet. No yelling, no shame, no heavy air, just a silence, so wide it felt like forgiveness. I unlocked the door, stepping inside. The place was exactly how I remembered it. The faint smell of old wood, the framed photos on the hall table, the echo of memories that had never quite been mine to keep. Until now. I walked through each room slowly, letting the truth sink into my bones. "This is yours, Danielle. No one can take it away." My phone buzzed again. I hesitated, then looked. A voicemail from Mom. I pressed play, her voice breaking, almost unrecognizable. "Danielle, please. Think about what you're doing. You're tearing the family apart. We can still fix this. Call me." I closed my eyes, letting the guilt stab at me one last time, then letting it go. There was no fixing what they'd already broken. I wandered into the kitchen, laying my folder on the counter, fingers brushing the grainy wood of the cabinets. I could still see Grandpa making tea there, humming off-key. For the first time in years, my shoulders relaxed. No one was coming to lock me out. No one was coming to tell me I wasn't welcome. No one was coming to decide my worth. I poured myself a glass of water, and as I stood there, the house seemed to breathe with me, a living, forgiving thing. Maybe this was the first day of my real life. Outside, the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long golden shadows across the porch. And somewhere in that silence, I let myself believe I could be happy here. That night, the house felt impossibly quiet, the kind of silence that stings your ears when you've lived with chaos too long. I moved from room to room, checking every corner like a soldier on patrol, as if they might come bursting through the door to steal it back. But no one came. In Grandpa's old bedroom, I found the small oak box he used to keep on his dresser. My hands trembled as I opened it, half expecting to find it empty. But there it was, a faded family photo. Me, maybe 8 years old, clinging to Grandpa's side with the biggest grin, while the rest of them looked away. I traced my tiny smile with a fingertip, my heart twisting. He'd known. Even then, he'd known I was alone in a crowded house. I sank down onto the bed, letting the exhaustion hit me like a wave. The clock ticked on the nightstand, steady and calm, not screaming, not accusing, just letting time pass.
My phone buzzed again.
Another message from Tom. Come back. We can make a deal. I laughed, a sound so sharp it surprised me. A deal? After they tried to erase me? After they'd left me starving for love for years? I typed back with hands that no longer shook. No deals. No more. Then I turned off the phone completely, letting the silence wrap around me like a warm blanket. Outside, the wind rattled the old shutters, but the house stood strong, refusing to fall. So would I. I closed my eyes and let myself dream, really dream, for the first time in years, about painting the porch, planting flowers out front, cooking a meal that didn't taste like pity. Tomorrow, I would go through the documents again, call the bank, change every lock, make this place safe, truly mine. No one would ever take it away. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was ready to build a life that no one could rewrite, no matter how many times they tried. Outside, the stars blinked through the night sky, quiet witnesses to my freedom. And in that gentle darkness, I found peace. The next morning felt like a rebirth. I woke up with the sunlight spilling through Grandpa's old curtains, warming my face in a way I'd almost forgotten. There was no shouting, no guilt dripping through the walls, just the soft creak of floorboards beneath my feet. I padded down the hallway, still half in a dream, and stepped onto the porch. The air was sharp and clean, carrying the promise of something better. My phone stayed shut off on the kitchen counter. I refused to let their poison follow me into this new day. Instead, I sat on the porch swing, looking over the yard I'd once believed I'd never see again. For a moment, I let myself remember it all. The cruel words, the cold shoulders, the quiet tears no one ever noticed. Then I let those memories go. Grandpa had trusted me with this place because he'd seen something they refused to see. My heart, my strength, my ability to build something whole out of all their brokenness. And I would honor him, not with revenge, but with peace. I'd paint these walls in colors I chose. I'd fill these rooms with laughter I could believe in. I'd sleep under this roof, knowing no one could ever push me out again. If they came back for me, I'd stand tall. If they tried to steal from me again, I'd fight. But I wouldn't let them shrink me anymore. This was my beginning. My chance to write the ending they'd never allow me to have. For the first time, I wanted to live, really live, without apology. I looked up at the sky, whispered a quiet thank you to Grandpa, and let a smile stretch across my face. This was mine. This was enough. And nothing, no family, no past, no poison, would ever strip it away again. Inheritance doesn't always reveal wealth. Sometimes, it reveals the truth. My name is Camille Donovan, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because I need to ask you, has your own mother ever treated you like a footnote at your father's table? Like a placeholder until her favorite showed up?
It was a Thursday.
Rain tapped against the windows like it knew what was coming. The will had been read. Not in a grand lawyer's office with mahogany chairs and glass water jugs like in the movies. No, just in my mother's dining room. A room that still smelled like the roast I made for my father the last Thanksgiving before his heart attack. The lawyer had already left. And now only family remained, if you could even call it that. I sat at the edge of the table, quiet, still. Across from me, my younger sister Chloe was grinning like she'd just won a prize at a raffle. Her new fiancé squeezed her hand under the table. Mom sat at the head as always, wearing pearls she hadn't earned and sipping from the wine glass I bought her last Christmas, the one she never thanked me for. That's when she put her hand on the will. Not metaphorically. Literally. She leaned forward, her palm flat over the paper like it was her crown. "You won't get a penny, Camille," she said. Her voice was sugar-coated venom. "Dad's decision stands. The house, the savings, the stocks, all go to Chloe. That's what he wanted." I didn't speak. "Not yet," she went on, twisting the knife like she'd practiced this speech in front of a mirror. "You always said you didn't care about money. So now's your chance to prove it." Chloe giggled, a soft, smug sound that filled the silence like static. Everyone stared at me, waiting for the explosion, waiting for the scene, waiting for me to beg, cry, shout. But I didn't do any of those things. I simply placed my fork down on the edge of my plate. Then my knife. Deliberate. Graceful. I looked directly at my mother and said, "Then you won't get anything from me." The air shifted. Her smile faltered. But I didn't flinch. I rose from my chair, the same chair I used to sit in as a child, legs swinging while Dad told me bedtime stories over dinner prep. No goodbyes. No theatrics. Just the sound of my heels clicking against the wood floor as I walked away. Behind me, I heard Chloe scoff, so dramatic. But even she sounded unsure. Because I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just left. And in that moment, that exact moment, I knew. They hadn't just disrespected me. They had freed me from the need to prove anything, from the chains of being the good daughter, from the lie that family always means love. What they didn't realize, the girl they just cut off, was the only one who ever held them together. And what happened next? Let's just say, they'll never forget it. Love, when laced with conditions, is just debt disguised as devotion. I didn't always think my mother hated me. As a child, I thought the silence was just her way. The way she never hugged me after my dance recitals. The way she ruffled Chloe's hair, but never mine. The way she'd say, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Like my very existence was some sort of inconvenience. I told myself she was just strict, busy, tired. But over the years, the excuses wore thin, and the patterns became impossible to ignore. Chloe was the princess. Everything she touched was praised, even if it was broken. Every mistake was brushed off. Every tantrum rewarded. She crashed Dad's car at 17. They bought her a new one. She failed 2 semesters of college. They called it academic burnout and flew her to Italy for emotional recovery. Meanwhile, I graduated magna cum laude, paid my own tuition, got a job at a tech firm and wired money home every month to help with bills. No one clapped. No one asked how I was sleeping, or eating, or living. Mom just said, "Well, you're the responsible one. You don't need help." I used to carry that sentence like a badge of honor. I don't need help. Until I realized it wasn't praise. It was abandonment dressed up as admiration. When Dad passed, I stepped up. I organized the funeral, paid off part of the mortgage, made sure Mom had groceries while Chloe was busy finding herself in Bali. For months, I worked double shifts, managed Mom's insurance paperwork, and covered utility bills without asking for a cent back. Not because I expected anything, but because I believed somewhere deep down that love meant showing up. That eventually, she'd look at me and see what I was worth. I was wrong. The week after the will reading, memories flooded back. Not the sweet ones. The real ones. Like the Christmas Mom gave Chloe a brand new iPad and handed me a $10 Walmart candle, still in the clearance sticker wrapping. Or the time I overheard her on the phone with her sister. "Camille? Oh, she's not really like Chloe. She's serious. Kind of cold. But she's good with numbers." As if my achievements were character flaws. As if being reliable made me less lovable. But nothing hit me harder than a photo I found in an old family album. It was from a school play. Chloe stood center stage, in costume, glowing under the spotlight. Mom stood beside her, arms wrapped tight around her waist. And their eye was cropped out of the frame. My arm was still visible, just a sliver of a sleeve on the edge of the photo. They had cut me out, deliberately. I stared at that image for 10 minutes, and then I burned it, because I finally understood. I wasn't unloved. I was used. I wasn't a daughter in her eyes. I was a tool. And the moment I stopped being useful, she discarded me, like I was nothing more than background noise in someone else's spotlight. But what she failed to realize, backgrounds are where foundations are built. And I was about to build something so strong, so undeniable, that even she wouldn't be able to crop me out again. Some inherit the house. Others inherit the wisdom not to beg for the keys. I stayed gone. No texts. No calls. No awkward drop-ins pretending things were fine. And at first, I thought they didn't notice. But then, the cracks began to show. Chloe was in over her head before the ink dried on the will. She moved into the house with her fiancé, the same one who once told me I was too intense at a dinner party when I corrected his math in front of friends. They started renovations immediately, tore out Dad's favorite oak floors and installed cold, trendy concrete slabs for aesthetics. She listed Mom's car for sale to make space. She cut off the gardener, fired the cleaning lady, and ignored a leaky pipe in the kitchen because, in her words, how hard can plumbing be? Within 3 weeks, I heard she'd missed the property tax deadline. 2 of Dad's remaining rental clients, the only income source left, threatened to leave due to mismanagement. By week 4, a family friend sent me a photo of the house. The front lawn, once trimmed and edged with tulips I used to plant each spring, was overgrown. The windows looked dirty. The porch light was shattered. But what struck me the most wasn't what I saw. It was what I felt. Nothing. No guilt. No ache. Just a hollow space where obligation used to live. One morning, I got a call from Mrs. Hemsworth, my dad's old accountant and lifelong friend. Her voice trembled as she said, "Camille,
I'm sorry.
I thought I should let you know. They're struggling. Chloe's made a mess of things. Honestly, everyone thought you'd be the one to take over. You were the responsible one. You always have been." I didn't respond at first. She added quietly, "You should have been the one. Everyone knows it." That stuck with me. Echoed. Not out of pride, but because it proved something I'd always wondered.
They all saw it.
They just stayed silent. That Saturday, I drove to the cemetery alone. Dad's grave sat on the east side, under the willow tree where the sun reached late. I hadn't visited since the funeral. Not because I didn't miss him, but because it hurt to feel like he left me behind with them. I stood there for a long time, wind nudging the hem of my coat, watching the light shift across his name. And I whispered, "I'm not fighting them. I'm not rescuing them.
Not this time.
You taught me how to stand, so now I'm standing but not for them." I let the silence settle, then added, "I hope wherever you are you finally see me." On the drive back, I passed by the old neighborhood.
Kids were riding bikes.
A woman was walking a dog with a stroller in the other hand. And for the first time, I saw my childhood not as a memory but as a survival story. I had grown up in the shadows of someone else's spotlight. Now, the light was gone. And I wasn't chasing it anymore. I was building my own. Sometimes, the most powerful sound isn't a scream. It's the silence that follows your absence. When you grow up being told to keep the family together, you become good at things that go unnoticed. You learn how to stretch a dollar, how to read tension in a room, how to write emails for your father's clients because he never liked all the computer stuff, how to keep the books balanced while your sister overspent the budget. Again. But when I walked away from them, I took all that knowledge with me. And for the first time, I used it for myself. I rented a small studio with peeling paint and terrible lighting. It had no air conditioning, but it had sunlight and silence. That was all I needed. I called up 2 old colleagues, women I had worked with during my corporate years. Women who, like me, were passed over, used, or ignored. They knew the grind. They had nothing to prove and everything to build. We started small. Branding services, data analytics for small firms, content planning. Within 2 months, we had 5 clients. By month 6, 14. I worked from morning till midnight. Not out of desperation. Out of freedom. This time, I didn't feel drained. I felt lit from the inside. One of our earliest clients was a logistics firm my family had once mocked. "They're too small time," Mom had said years ago when I suggested partnering with them for Dad's company. Now, that same firm had quadrupled in size and became our biggest account. I didn't mention the family connection. I didn't need to. We did the work. We delivered. We scaled them. They recommended us to 3 other firms. And just like that, the dominoes began to fall. 3 months later, I received an email from Business Growth Weekly. Subject: "We'd like to feature your startup in our Women Who Lead Spotlight." I stared at the screen for a full minute before responding. Not out of surprise, but because I knew this was only the beginning. I started getting tagged on LinkedIn. Camille Donovan helped triple our revenue in 2 quarters. Leadership that listens, adapts, and delivers. Proud to work with this team. I didn't brag. I didn't boast. I just let my work speak for me, in a language my family never bothered to learn. Meanwhile, back home, things weren't going so well. The house Chloe inherited was up for sale, quietly at first, then publicly. A cousin messaged me, "Hey, is everything okay with Aunt Marla and Chloe?" I saw their listing. Looks desperate. I didn't reply, but I clicked the listing. Saw the photos. The fancy chandelier had been replaced by a cheaper fixture. Dad's antique bookshelf was gone. The walls looked cold, not just empty, but stripped of identity. There were price cuts every week. Still, no offers. I heard whispers from old neighbors. "Chloe's not as sharp as people thought. Your mom's been asking around about reverse mortgages." But I said nothing. No warnings. No rescue. No, I told you so. Because I wasn't their safety net anymore. I was my own foundation. And here's the thing about building quietly. By the time they notice you've disappeared, you're already too far ahead for them to catch up. They gave me nothing, and still lost everything. The house on Wren Hill Lane used to be a symbol. People would pass it and whisper, "That's the Donovan place." Not because it was flashy, but because it stood for something. My father's pride. His legacy. Stability. Now it was starting to rot from the inside out. The roof had gone untouched through the winter. The tiles were curling like dead leaves. A pipe burst in the basement, flooding the foundation. Power got shut off for 2 days straight in June because Chloe forgot to pay the bill again. I didn't hear any of this directly. But whispers have wings in a small community. The family name started slipping from reverence to ridicule. Chloe had no idea how to manage estate taxes or navigate Dad's residual business contracts. She tried selling off furniture, even some of Mom's jewelry, but couldn't explain the missing paperwork when a buyer asked for verification. She posted a desperate Facebook message looking for a consultant to help her restructure Dad's old company. Nobody responded publicly, but someone screenshotted it and sent it to me, captioned, "Remember when she said you were too serious for business? Look who's serious now." I didn't reply. I didn't laugh. I just saved it. Mom started calling extended relatives. People she hadn't spoken to in years. People she once looked down on, like Aunt Rochelle, who worked 2 jobs after her divorce and was never polished enough for family parties. Now, she was dialing Rochelle like a lifeline. Nobody picked up. Nobody returned her messages. Then one morning my phone buzzed. It was her. My mother. I stared at the screen. I didn't pick up. She called again. And again. On the 5th try, I answered. Not with my voice, but with a text. "You said I wouldn't get a penny. And you were right. I never needed one." Then I blocked the number. There was no satisfaction in doing it. Just clarity. A clean line drawn through years of disrespect. Word spread that the house was going into default. Neighbors whispered at the grocery store. One posted a vague tweet. "Wild to watch a legacy fall apart in slow motion. Wren Hill isn't what it used to be." Another tagged me in a photo of the front gate with the note torn off the mailbox. I untagged myself because I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to circle back and say, look what happened. They were already living in the ruins of what they chose. Mom tried one last thing, the ultimate guilt move.
She emailed me.
Subject: please talk to me. No message body. Just an attachment, a photo of Dad's grave.
As if that would break me.
But it didn't. Because I had already spoken to him. I'd made peace. And she didn't get to use his memory as a weapon. Their world was crumbling. Not because of me, but because I was no longer holding it up. And when people build kingdoms on the backs of those they call lesser, they're always shocked when the ground disappears. Erased daughters don't disappear. They just learn to rise louder than memory. It started with a LinkedIn repost. Someone from one of our client firms, a VP, shared my story in a corporate leadership group, saying, Camille Donovan's journey is what real resilience looks like. Quiet power, built from scratch. That one post was shared over 2,000 times. Then came the invite. A prestigious women's leadership summit in Chicago. Would you be our closing keynote? They'd cover my flight, hotel, even give me a stipend. But more than that, they wanted my voice. Not for a client. Not behind the scenes. Front stage. Centered.
Heard.
I almost said no. Old wounds have a way of whispering doubts. But something in me, the version of myself that never needed their validation, said yes. I wore a deep burgundy suit. No brand labels. Just sharp tailoring and quiet confidence. The room was packed. Women from finance, media, health, and tech, CEOs, creatives, mothers, founders. And as I walked to the podium, I didn't shake. Because I wasn't there to prove anything. I was there to be. My speech wasn't full of buzzwords or bullet points.
It was a story.
I told them about growing up as the shadow behind someone else's crown. About bookkeeping without a title. About being the safety net everyone needed. Until they didn't. I didn't name names.
Didn't speak with venom.
But I said this. Sometimes being erased is a gift. You get to rewrite your life in your own ink. You get to stop performing and start becoming. And when you rise, not to get back at them, but to finally see yourself, you realize they didn't break you. They freed you. I looked out into the crowd. Eyes were wet. Hands gripped notebooks. And then they rose. A standing ovation. Thunderous.
Sustained.
Soul deep. Back home, I didn't know this, but someone had recorded the speech and posted a clip online. A neighbor tagged my mother in the comments. She watched it late at night, alone in the dim living room with the curtains drawn. She didn't know I'd find out. But a former friend of hers, one who now followed me, messaged me. Your mom saw the video. She didn't say a word, just stared at the screen like someone had swallowed her breath. I imagined it. Her on that old floral couch. No audience. No applause. Just regret echoing in the silence she built herself. And here's the thing. She never once believed I'd amount to anything without their table. But I'd built my own. And now, the same people she desperately wanted approval from were applauding her daughter.
The daughter she erased.
She used to tell me I was too emotional to lead. Now I was being invited to speak on emotional intelligence in leadership panels across the country. She once said, "You'll always be behind Chloe." Now Chloe couldn't pay off a leaking roof. She had bet everything on the wrong legacy. That night, I received a package at my office. No return address. Inside was a photo, me and my dad from when I was 10, sitting on the front porch, books on my lap. Taped to it was a note. You always were the one who paid attention. It was her handwriting. No apology. No explanation. Just that. And honestly, that was enough. Because now she knew what I'd always known. Power doesn't live in inheritance. It lives in who you become after they stop believing in you. Some visits aren't for reconciliation. They're for release. It had been over 2 years since I last saw the house. The walls that once held my childhood, my sleepless teenage nights, my quiet sacrifices, had become nothing more than faded siding and overgrown hedges. I didn't knock. I didn't park in the driveway. I just stood across the street, breathing in a moment I had waited for without realizing it. Not revenge. Closure. The house looked tired. The white trim was yellowing. The windows streaked. The roses Dad once trimmed like clockwork were now long, wild arms of red and thorn. There was a foreclosure notice tucked halfway under the welcome mat. A welcome mat. Still there, after everything. I walked up quietly and slid an envelope into the old brass mailbox. The letter inside wasn't bitter. It was honest. You gave me nothing. I gave you everything. Now I give you space and silence. Not because I'm angry, but because I finally understand. I was never meant to belong where I wasn't seen. You made your choice. And now I've made mine. This is the last thing I'll ever leave at this house. No signature. Just the clean end of a story. I turned and walked away, my heels soft against the cracked concrete path, my breath steady. Behind me, a curtain shifted. She'd seen me, but she didn't come out.
Not this time.
Later that week, I heard from a former neighbor who still watched the street like a retired detective. She found the letter, he told me. She stood there for a long time, reading it over and over. Then she sat on the porch steps. Just Saturday. He paused. She looked small, Camille. Like she'd finally realized how much she'd lost. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. Because sometimes the greatest power is walking away, not in rage, but in peace. Letting someone sit in the silence they created. That weekend, Mom called my old cell, the number I no longer used. She left a voicemail I would never hear. I imagine it wasn't an apology. She never did those. But I also imagined she was holding the letter in one hand and an overdue water bill in the other. While Chloe scrolled her phone on the couch, still waiting for the world to hand her something she never earned. That was their circle, and I was finally outside of it. Meanwhile, my circle was growing. I'd just signed a lease on a second office location. My assistant was onboarding 2 new interns. Our firm had been featured in 3 more business publications that month. I was building a legacy, not out of spite, but out of the space they once called empty. And that childhood home? It was no longer home. It was a shell. A place I outgrew the second I realized I was never the problem. Sometimes the letter you leave behind isn't for them to understand. It's for you. To know you finally said everything without needing a single reply. Some legacies aren't inherited. They're rebuilt from rubble and risen from silence. The gala hall shimmered with soft gold lighting and navy blue tablecloths. Crystal glasses clinked softly. The theme was voices that change futures. I didn't expect much when I got the invitation. I thought maybe I'd be sitting at a table near the back, a token nod to my company's recent work. But as I walked in, the event director found me instantly. She smiled. "You're our final honoree tonight." I froze. "Philanthropist of the Year," she said. "Your foundation, your journey, it's inspired so many." I stood backstage, just off the velvet curtain, as the MC read my name. Tonight, we honor a woman who didn't just rebuild after betrayal. She turned silence into strategy, pain into progress, and memory into momentum. People began to clap. Then the applause built. Thunderous, echoing, a rhythm of recognition I never once begged for, but had earned. I stepped into the light. Not the light they thought I'd crawl toward, but the light I had built myself, brick by brick, speech by speech, decision by decision. I took the mic and scanned the room. CEOs, lawyers, activists, artists, teenage girls who looked up at me the way I once looked up at everyone else, wondering if I'd ever be enough. I didn't cry, but my voice did soften. I stand here not because I won, but because I refused to stay invisible. And tonight, I'm proud to announce the Donovan Future Fund, named after my father, will support girls who've been told they are too much, too little, or simply not enough. We'll give them tools, mentorship, safety, and most of all, permission to take up space without apology. Flashbulbs erupted. Somewhere in the front, a young girl with tight curls clapped so hard her glasses slipped down her nose. At that same moment, in a house 2 towns away, my mother sat in the dark. Power shut off again. No central heating. Just a candle flickering in the corner, next to bills piled on the coffee table like unpaid sins. She had no one left to blame. No one left to beg. Only Chloe, dozing on the couch, jobless and bitter. And the TV. The gala was airing on the local network. I filled the screen in high definition.
Poised.
Glowing. A crown of earned grace across my shoulders. And as my voice rang out through the speakers, I imagined she leaned forward and saw everything she threw away. She said I wouldn't get a penny. I say in my final voiceover, as the gala fades to black. She was right. I got peace. I got power. I got a future. And now, she gets to remember me like this. Forever out of reach.